In this edition of Careers That Matter, I'm joined by Kareem Allam of Fairview Strategies. Kareem is a political strategist. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, Stu.
Explain exactly what your job is. You know, a lot of people hear, oh yeah, political strategist, but they don't really understand what the job entails.
A political strategist is someone that you hire to help run your campaign. And they are someone that will be familiar with all the aspects of running a campaign. So you're familiar with polling and research, you're familiar with media and social media, but you're also familiar with communities. As time has gone on, our politics has gotten more complicated and complex. So coalition building has become a more important part of the work. You can't be a good political strategist if you don't understand the community of voters around you. And my insights are the things that my candidate clients hire me to do.
What does a typical day look like for you, or is there such a thing?
There isn't such a thing. In the United States, a political strategist job is 365 days a year. It never stops. In Canada, our elections are more infrequent. And so I'll have a private sector career when I'm not running campaigns. But I really rely on these political campaigns to test out new communication technologies, new polling techniques, to validate to my private sector clients the importance and the value of the work that I produce. But yeah, it really involves, sort of three major components. One is really having a good understanding of the policy framework that we operate in. I was a policy director at the Vancouver Board of Trade when I was younger, and that gave me a really good foundation understanding how business is regulated and how our economy, the things that our economy needs to do to be competitive with China and the US, and for the BC economy to be competitive with Alberta. So policy is one part of it. And you want to stay on top of it by reading newspapers every day. But then when that reporter refers to a Utilities Commission report or something, you want to make sure that you're pulling into it. So policy is one part of it. The second part of it's the media aspect of it. The media is changing so quickly, so fast, and it's dynamic. I remember the first campaign I had to work on, we were debating whether we should have a website or not. And now we're contemplating how we're going to incorporate artificial intelligence into how we categorize data on campaigns. So technology, media, and the relationships we build with media are critical. The last part is just community. Canada is a diverse country with diverse ambitions. Understanding the different parts of each segment of society and how we can sort of coalesce these different communities behind common ideas. That part is pure art. There is no science behind that. And so when we identify, an economic group with an ethnic group with a geographic community, how a piece of policy can bring people together, that's instinct, that's familiarity, and that's the gray hair in my beard.
So are your clients political candidates, or are they or companies and or organizations that also want to play in that public arena?
So my clients in my business are all private sector clients that want to understand the dynamic of decision making in British Columbia. So whether that's political, whether that's community. So it could be a company that's wanting to build a piece of infrastructure, and they want to make sure that they're doing the project in the right way to get the support from the community.
To gain social license.
To gain social license,
right.
To gain regulatory license, and then to gain Indigenous consent. So that's one part of it. But the way that I prove to my clients that I actually know what I'm talking about is by winning campaigns. And so the two kind of go hand in hand. So you could say the campaigns for me are my marketing, are the places where I test out my ideas and my instinct about the province and about different communities and then different communications technologies. And then I bring some of those things back into the private sector. The person that started all this was Gallup. He had an idea for how he could research how people feel about public opinion. And so Gallup goes in and starts donating his time for his polling work to political campaigns. And then once he proved out that he could predict who the next president of the United States was, he could then predict and go to Coca-Cola and Pepsi and say, I could predict who's going to buy your can of Coke or your can of Pepsi, or who's more likely to buy your can of Coke and Pepsi. And that became of commercial value. So I didn't invent the business model. It's been around for 60, 70 years, but I'm enjoying walking in the shadows of giants.
You can't do this alone, though, even as a small shop. So, how many people are a part of your team?
Our team is big. It's pretty diverse. There's about 10 of us at my company. But when I do get involved in campaigns, I have a long list of friends that I've grown up with in politics. I was a BC Young Liberal at the Simon Fraser University campus, and I met some friends there. And then I was a Young Conservative. Some of the people I got to know when I was a Young Conservative are now the leader of the Conservative Party and Premier of Alberta, former Premier of Alberta, all people I met when I was young. But some of those people that were around them that didn't run for office but run campaigns are people that I might call to help me with the communications or the database management or the community engagement. So to run a successful campaign, you need a really big team with really diverse experiences. There is a small group of us, James, Deanie, Manuel, Taylor, that we've kind of stuck through some pretty big campaigns together, and we like to work together, and we see campaigns as an opportunity to bring the old gang back together. But yeah, these personal relationships that you build are incredibly critical to success.
So, you can't take this up as a career somewhere later in life. You have to have been involved in politics for decades, yeah. I would imagine, because how else do you have the chops?
Yeah, a lot of this is instinct, and a lot of this is just, I've seen this move before, where have I seen it before, and being able to sort of respond quickly. You can't guess at the kinds of traps that an NDP or a Liberal campaign might set at you, and if you're not ready for them, you might take the bait. But also to the communities that you work with. It takes years of relationships to really understand the South Asian community, the Chinese community, Indigenous communities. You can't pull Indigenous people to understanding their culture. You're either spending time on the ground with them or you're not. And then you can, after you spend that time, you have an instinct about how they might react about a certain policy item, or you might have an instinct on what is negotiable, what will be not negotiable. So time in is more important than anything else, but genuine time in, genuine engagement is the most critical part to success in politics or in community.
When you graduated from secondary school,
yes,
did you already know what you wanted to do?
I didn't graduate from secondary school. I was actually expelled from school, but I did graduate university. So thank you, Kwantlen.
You went back and made up a couple of courses so that you could get in?
Yeah, that's right. So thanks to Kwantlen University and Simon Fraser University for babying me through my first couple of years of university. I did have a little bit of an idea when I was in high school. I got the political bug. I got to meet Governor Kitzhopper at a school trip, and I was just enamored with the committee meetings and the debates and the passion and the fervor and the exchange of ideas. Politics, yes, has become less of a platform where ideas are exchanged, and it's more a platform for exchanging personal barbs. But that's what really excited me, was the policy. And how the policy related to people. When I was going to high school in Oregon, the forestry sector had completely shut down. Where my high school was, the jobless rate was through the roof. People were really struggling. And to go to Salem, Oregon, and see the governor talk about those issues that were impacting my neighbors, it had a profound effect on me. So I knew I wanted to do something in the policy arena then, and then I won an essay writing contest in university that allowed me to go to Parliament Hill and Canadianize my American experience. And that stuck with me, and it's where I wanted to be, is in that intersection of people, policy, and place.
So what got you from Oregon to British Columbia?
I was a British Columbian, and I went to Oregon for high school there. I played a little bit of baseball, a little bit of basketball, and caused a lot of trouble. And that's probably.
But you were having a good time.
I was having a good time. That's probably why my parents sent me away. I needed a little bit more discipline, and I think for my friends that might be watching, they would probably agree that yes, he's a very exuberant personality.
So, what did you first study when you went to Kwantlen?
I initially economics, and as I got later on to my degree, I could do the math, but not fast enough in the time allotted for the exam. So I switched to history, and then I went to Gonzaga University later on to work on my master's. And education was really important, but the most important things I did in university that were helpful to my career were those classes on BC history. And one of the funny moments of history is that I walk into class, and one of the textbooks assigned to me was written by a guy named Jeff Meggs, and it was a book on salmon and the labor history of salmon. When I was Ken Sims' chief of staff, I went and met with Jeff Meggs and had a copy of the book, and I got it autographed by Jeff. So the BC history was important to understand. It's a rich, vibrant, colorful history. But you can't understand the province if you can't understand how we got here. And that to me was probably the most important part of my education that made me successful.
So you went right back to the beginning of British Columbia then.
Yeah.
The decision to join Confederation, the decisions around do we or don't we go through the process of ceding territory, something that, of course, Sir James Douglas abandoned after his initial starts, I think, on 13 First Nations. And you find that having all of that history helps to inform what you do today.
Absolutely. So the first part of this is understanding that the lack of certainty we have on the land question in BC is what's halting our economic progress. Every time we've created certainty with Indigenous peoples, it's led to unleashing a tremendous economic potential, whether it's CNOC, Heatherlands, Jericho, wood fiber LNG, the work that the Heisler are doing on 2 projects. Billions of dollars of investment are attracted. And when we don't and we fight, everyone loses. So having that early understanding of treaty making, and then the more current evolution with the Haida Recognition Act, the Daniels, the Williams decision, in the Chilcotin. Chilcotin were all critical. But also even the more recent history, the Vietnam War and the number of Americans that came up to avoid the draft, that helped sort of create the foundation of the Green Party. People forget that, yes, historically BC sends more Conservatives than any other province to the Parliament, but we're also the place where Greenpeace was founded. And, you know, it's a unique place, Vancouver, where federal Conservatives actually might not support an oil pipeline. And so understanding that the history of how we got here, and understanding that history of how some of the more prominent families in Vancouver also have homes on the island, on the Gulf Islands, and you can now understand why there's an aversion to oil tankers up the coast. All these little pieces help inform campaigns. All these people, all these little bits of data and data points help inform successful infrastructure projects as well.
So you study that. What then started to draw you towards the political arena?
I think you get dragged in pushing and screaming. I don't think anyone goes into politics. I think you get pulled in. But fundamentally, the big changes and the big decisions that need to be made to reform and move our economy into the next century could only be achieved politically. We cannot use flowery prose. We cannot flowery prose our way into reconciliation. It is going to be a negotiated. It's going to be negotiated at a political level.
And as Grand Chief Stuart Phillips says, it's not for wimps.
And it's not for wimps, and it's hard. One of the most poignant moments in my career was I was running an AFN campaign for national chief, and my candidate secured an endorsement from Ovid Murcredy, who was a former AFN chief himself and was there at the head of the Oka crisis. And as I was driving him back to his hotel room, he said to me, "Kareem, we have a problem, or you have a problem." And I said, "What's that?" And he told me that the problem is that in a single generation, we've gone from Pierre Trudeau to Justin Trudeau. We've gone from Brian Mulroney to Andrew Scheer. We've gone from Jack Layton to Jagmeet Singh. You have a crisis in leadership in your country. And I said, well, let's say I agree with that presumption. Why does it matter to you? I can rally my people behind a deal with Canada, but can these guys rally the Canadians behind a deal with me? And
leadership is leadership, no matter the culture.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
Yeah. So you get dragged into it. Where'd you start?
Well, I've run about 40 campaigns, some successful, some not. I've early in my career was very attracted to federal politics, but provincial politics, the work that Gordon Campbell and Carol Taylor were doing was really resonated with me. I remember in the 2000 federal election, the Green Party came out and announced that they were going to abolish income tax. And I'm like, that sounds good, but we're going to replace it with a carbon tax. And then just a few years later, Gordon Campbell came in with a carbon tax that was going to be revenue neutral.
Carol Taylor came in with the carbon tax.
And Gordon Campbell took good credit for it. But Carol Taylor came in with a carbon tax. But it was offsetting. Every dollar of carbon tax collected offset small business taxes or income taxes. And we're on our way there. And I thought it was a good plan for the planet. And I thought it was a good plan for BC business. And so a lot of that policy framing, I thought, was helping to position British Columbia into being that #1 jurisdiction in the world for business that was going to afford us the ability to build a world-class social programs, healthcare, mental health, seniors care, all that. All those things were funded by that growth in our economy. And there is a way, I think, for us to grow our economy, care about the environment, and then care for people as well. And I think there was very few people around me that really understood where we were going and what we were trying to do. And to see it picked apart has been sad for me, but it's also been reinvigorating for me and others that want to bring BC back to that place.
Okay, let's imagine some youngster, somebody in their teens going, your life looks pretty interesting to me. I think I want to take a look at this. What would you ask them to do in their own self-analysis about the kind of personality traits that they would need to have to be able to not only survive, but thrive in the arena that you call home?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think the thing that separates great leaders in politics versus not are two things. One is the work ethic, and we've talked about that in the past. But the other part is just that connection to everyday people, that life experience that you gain by traveling the province, by working in communities, by working in charities and not-for-profits, and wrestling with some of the more challenging and some of the more complex issues of our time. You're not going to get that by reading a book. You're not going to get that by reading the Vancouver Sun every day. You're going to get that by going to the downtown east side and volunteering. You're going to get that by working with new Canadians, helping them learn English. You are going to gain those experiences that are going to make you valuable to the public policy process by doing those things. The civil service that runs our government, they don't do those things. That's what we do as politicians. That's the perspective that we need to bring. And so you have to bring something different to the table to be valuable. Parroting off the same experiences. I have MBAs, and those things are all important. Education's critical. But that unique perspective on community, that diversity of experience you bring is the most important part to success.
Well, one other thing that I think that we talked about in our previous interview on Conversations That Matter was about having this network. And as you're speaking, I'm thinking that one of the attributes that I think is remarkably important that Perry Bellegarde shared with me when he was the national chief of the Assembly of First Nations. He said, if you can't build relationships, you can't build anything. And I think that in your line of work, that would be true to the nth degree.
Absolutely. Your relationships with people are critical. Your word is critical. Your reputation is critical. Your track record is critical. But at some point, you get to a negotiation on a project or a negotiation on a political agreement, and you just can't close the gap. And the only thing that's going to close the gap is taking that leap of faith, of trust of the person at the other side of the negotiating table with you. And only through trust and personal relationships can we make progress. If we are to lawyer up every single agreement, we will go nowhere as a country. We need to take leaps of faith, but that only happens with trust building and relationship building. So I agree 100% with what Perry said.
Fascinating career that you have, and one that I'm sure that a young person who watches this interview would go, okay, lots to think about here, but it's a career worth having.
It is a career worth having for sure.
Thanks.
Thank you, Sue.